Hey gang, it's KR King of D&D Homebrew, asking the question today, should you favor your players in a RPG game? And the simple answer to that question is, of course, you should favor the players. They're your friends, you're there to have fun, they're taking out their time to play in your game that you're running. So when push comes to shove, yes, you want the players to, there's no winning in an RPG, but you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Now, the question really to me is not, do you favor them, but how much do you want to challenge the players? And this kind of depends on the players that you have and the game that you run. So on the podcast I do with Daniel Norton, Monsters and Treasures, check that out. One of our listeners who calls in, Merc the Meek, talks about the fact that he plays D&D with his 8-year-old son. I believe it's his son. And just talks about different aspects when you have an 8-year-old child that you're playing with. You are not going to challenge that player like you would an adult. So the level of favoritism that you show, the level of benefit of the doubt, giving them a break, is going to be much higher than for one of your friends who's a contemporary. Just like if you play a kid in sports, if you're playing basketball and you're dunking on them and slapping the ball away, people are like, what is your deal, right? It's, and it's not fun for that person. And the same thing if a professional player, if you a professional player is going to fool around, if you try to show them up, they're going to just boom, show you what's what, right? If you're an adult and maybe even a kid, but you really don't want to do that. And another thing about your group is the level of experience, because a new player, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. You're going to allow them some mistakes. You're going to favor them in situations they forgot about some spell they had. They didn't realize some power. They're trying to learn the game. And when you start to say, hey, that's the way it goes, because I'm just like the old school. I'm a referee here. I'm just running this world and you make mistakes. Well, okay, but they're new. They're trying the game out. If you want to play that way, it's a very good way to scare people away from an RPG game, right? So you're going to favor them a little more. And the final thing about your group is expectations. Do the players expect to be challenged all the time, such that they have to figure out really complicated puzzles, or they have to do role play with things where they have to remember all these people's names and relationships and all this stuff, and then they make one mistake, then they lose some critical aspect of what they're trying to accomplish, and they better do their homework, they better read up on your 100 pages of lore that you dump each week or whatever, right? Well, there are people that want to play that sort of game, right? But there's a lot of people that don't. Right? I don't remember who ran that town. Well, I guess you just don't remember. Well, come on. I don't, I would know that. I live in the town. And that's where you give them the benefit of the doubt. You favor the players in those situations because their expectations of the challenge level in terms of remembering the history of your game is not that high. But remember, there are players that really want to be challenged. There are players that want to have, NPCs and monsters and whatever that use good tactics. They want to get there and, on a battle map or even whether it's, Theater of the Mind or on a VTT, they want to have some really, really clever strategies by these monsters. But you're, again, evaluating that by the player's expectations of what that challenge level is going to be in your campaign. And that relates to another aspect in terms of favoring the players, which is what kind of world are you running? Are you running a gritty, dark world where death lurks behind every, pillar or tree or, over the next hill, right? Where no one can be trusted. There are no lawful good type people. Everyone is out for themselves. Again, I wouldn't necessarily run an evil world, but, I've run some neutral worlds, ask my players, because I tend to run a world that's a little grittier. It's a little more Game of Thrones than it is Lord of the Rings, right? There are some good people, honestly good people, but they tend to be kind of far and few between. And I'll tell the players that, right? Because another thing is if your game is that way, tell them up front. Tell them the challenge level that's going to be in this world. Tell them what the ethos of this world, the mood of the people, the kind of moral structure that's going on, and the threat level from, if you leave the city at night, you could be dead. Not just you wandered out in the city and, 20 werewolves attacked your first level party and now you're all dead or something. Like, why are you doing that? Just tell them that. They grew up there. They know what this world is like. But you can run a world that is gritty and dark and the high challenge, but the players need to know that. And again, back to their expectations. If that's what they're into, you won't have a problem. But if they're not, they may run a few sessions and go, you know what? I could use a little more favoritism, right? Because any mistake I make, I get punished. And here's another one. If you make a mistake and a battle gets out of hand and you're looking at a TPK, do you favor the players and let them off the hook? Not necessarily fudging rolls or, oh, the creature just died suddenly, it ran out of hit points. But in terms of, strategy that I sometimes do when I've made a mistake, I say to the players, now, what do you have? What's going on? What do you, look at your character sheets, look and see. Because they'll suddenly go, oh, I had this wand that, this one player had these grenades that they had, necrotic grenades. And, again, they heal potions and things that they forget about. And it's not, you could say, it's not up to me, it's the GM to remind them of that. Well, okay. Then you're clearly not favoring them, right? Because once the situation, especially if I caused it, I'm going to favor I'm going to give them a chance. I'm going to say, well, this is, believe me, once you do this a few times where they see death does lurk, and my players, the guys I run 5e, are just like, you've got a pretty nasty world, right? But they also know that I'm going to start to favor them or give them breaks or things like that when the situation, especially when I haven't quite calculated this. Now, the next question for challenge. If the players make a stupid mistake, you tell them this is the swamp of ultimate evil, they still go in there, they get attacked, they're in trouble. Do you do things to favor them? Do you make an effort to help them out or give them the benefit of the doubt? All this kind of thing, that classic favoritism. Or do you say, hey, we're just going to let the dice roll where they want, what they will, and we'll see what happens? Well, again, you're there to run this game. You're there to have fun. You are going to favor the players in some way. So is there something creative you can do? Is there a distraction that occurs? Is there an idea that the players, you say, remember what so-and-so told you about Knowles or something? Some aspect of their organization or some god that they're afraid of, and the player makes some, I'm going to call out to whatever, some strategy, something that you can then latch on to not necessarily just save the day. You win, yay! All you had to do is yell out, Yug, duck the god, and they run away. But to give them some kind of opportunity, because as Daniel Norton is always talking about from Bandits Keep, the fiction. What is the fiction of the world you're running? And the fiction is not, oh, I got to chapter 3 and all the main characters died. Well, that was interesting. The fiction is, how is it that they got out of this impossible situation? Again, you're still potentially going to punish them. You still might have a few players that die in some situation, but you're favoring them in a way of creating some situation, something from things they've done, something that they key in on, such that they might escape a situation that they shouldn't have gotten themselves into. And they will learn that first time they do that especially if, one or two players did die, they quickly learn from that. Another aspect of favoring the players is if you create puzzles or, some tome that they have to read or something that they have to figure out, or they have to put together something in a dungeon complex or whatever, and they're just not figuring it out. They can't do it. They're at a dead end. And first of all, never have dead ends where they can't escape or something, but they're not going to figure out what they came to get, and they're frustrated. They want to get to the end of this situation. Do you favor the players here, or do you just say, well, you lose and you got to come back? Now, you might expect me to say, well, yeah, you got to favor them, it depends, right? If it's not critical to the entire fate of your world or something, which don't do, but let's just say it's really important that they find this sword or this helm or something's going to happen, you can do this thing like of giving them some clue, of asking them to review something that they've seen, to think of some way in which the players might discover this. Because again, if you have things that they're not important, but they couldn't figure it out and they walk away, they're going to think about that. Maybe you say, well, that's good. They can come back and they can get more information or whatever. So, and again, I'm not beyond that. It depends on the severity of it. But if you find yourself doing this all the time, this happening, that means your puzzles or your clues or your, whatever it is that you're setting up, the players aren't getting it. The clues aren't enough. It's too opaque. It's too obscure. They just can't remember all the different things that were out in your world that they're supposed to then piece. Oh, that's the brother of this person, or they're the ones that were killed in the ancient battle, or I saw this on a tapestry, right? If they have a tapestry that they saw 6 months ago in real lifetime, and now they're seeing some scene that's related to it, and you describe that scene exactly like they saw on the tapestry, but they don't remember that, do you say, there is something you remember about this? Because you know what that is? That's favoring the players. Because why would they remember this? They're just playing their character. You're not supposed to prod them. And there are people that will just say, they didn't remember it, so they lose. Well, we favor the players, right? And they have lives. They don't write everything down. You want them to. You want them to care about your world like you do. You want them to think everything you wrote, this lore that you made, is so fascinating. They're just sitting at night rereading it, but they're not. So if they forget something like that, if they can't pull it off and they're stumped, they don't realize, oh my God, this mural is the key. This is the one that's different. It has something to it that relates back to this, to this. You got to give them a little clue. You got to say something in your memory. There's something there. Another aspect of favoring the players is trust. I think you always want to trust the players. If they have prepared spellcasters, trust that they're going to write their spells down and use them. I know people will say, okay, I want to see your spell list every day. And that'll irritate players. But I know players that you should be doing that to, right? Or even non-prepared, like they're using third level cleric spells or something, and you're sitting there thinking, how many have you used today? Or how many key points have you, or whatever it is, bardic inspiration or whatever, and you're thinking, you know what? Don't think about it. Don't worry about that. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Because the thing is, the players will be the ones that police that. They are the ones, because I've had players come to me and go, that person over there is rolling dice that are not accurate or something. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, then I'll start. Just let me see that die. Come on, this is important. I really want to see this one. Don't roll and grab it. Let me see what's going on. Again, very, very rare. And I would rather trust everyone, give everyone the benefit of the doubt than ever call anyone out. And I never really have. Occasionally, I've had players that are, they become notorious for that kind of thing. And you'll just go, oh, that's quite a roll, or something like that, because everybody knows that. But you know what? I don't even like to do that. I just say, I'm going to favor the players in that situation and assume always that they're telling the truth. And 99%, these are your friends. Everybody wants to win legitimately. So I'm going to just allow that. I mean, I'm not even going to think about that. But there are situations where you think later, that was interesting how many whatever spell or whatever thing there was. And here's another one about that. The players forget something that they've had or done, and they realize, I wouldn't have done that way. And that's altering reality. That's saying, well, wait a second, I would have known about this. And I would never have done that. Now, and it might be something really deadly. How do you handle that? Because if you're favoring the players, do you say, all right, you would have remembered, and so I'll let you instead strike with the magic weapon or the soul stealer, I just forgot. Well, do you give your NPCs and monsters that benefit of the doubt? Because if you look at the rules, I'm pretty sure 5e and older systems used to say, they don't get death saves, except if they're a highly, super powerful thing. They just die at 0. And again, the monster strategy, do you play them dumb or do you play them just, they just run away at the minute something bad happens? You're not creating really clever strategies for these creatures, or are you? And you certainly wouldn't say, you know what, I forgot that the orcs had this ability to inspire their people within 5 feet of them, so I'm going to roll with advantage. I'm going to re-roll the advantage or something. Or maybe you do that, right? Maybe you say, oops, I forgot something. That guy actually had advantage. And so I'm just going to roll an extra die. Okay, but notice the difference in that when players do that kind of thing, where they say, oh, I forgot this and that. If you start doing it all the time for monsters, and sometimes, again, if you have a good table with expectations that you're going to make this challenging and you're going to let them come back with things like that, but I'm going to do it too. Because we're trying to do this challenge within, the rules as written or the rules as agreed upon at the table. That's the challenge that what we're doing. And I think when you think about the challenge that you're presenting to the players, as opposed to, oh, I'm favoring them, so I'm going to, fudge rolls or end combats or, the monsters forget that they have these abilities, anything like that when things are out of hand or whatever, or, oh, you would know that person that you forgot about. Okay, you can do all those things. But then where's the challenge? What is the challenge level of your campaign, of your style of play? And when does that challenge bump up against favoring the players? And if you can remember that, and if the players are aware of that, I think they're actually going to be more satisfied playing your game. Because we really do want to win against someone like, I just know this from sports, you really want to win against someone better than you. You should beat someone who's not as good. And that's embarrassing. But if you can beat someone who's better, who presents a higher challenge, just more fun. Now, I'm a competitive person, right? Other people are not so competitive. So, and players the same way. And I don't necessarily want to just, I'm going to take on the tennis champion, U.S. tennis champion and see if I can beat him. And I just lose 0-6. I wouldn't do that. It's no fun. So it can't be super impossible. But I just like a challenge. And I recognize when, monsters do interesting things. There's a villain who decides, you guys have screwed me over, and now I'm your nemesis. And I'm smart. I'm not just going to run in and just fight to who kills who. I'm going to do things, and I'm going to manipulate people, and I'm going to be out to get you, right? That's not me that's out to get you. That's an NPC who it makes sense, but the players did, and it makes sense with the challenge level of your world. And I've seen it over and over again. As long as you're fair, as long as you're consistent, as long as you present that challenge and your players' expectations and experience is sufficient to the task, you're going to have a lot of fun. And if you like what you see on my channel, please subscribe. Always looking for more. Leave some comments. Love to hear you about your ideas on favoring the players and what you think about that. Is it possible to just be purely arbitrary or not? But most importantly, keep playing an RPG game, whichever one you choose, and tell somebody else about it.